In this video, I'm going to discuss about 15 frequently asked questions during the teaching jobs interviews in New Zealand. And these questions are not limited only when you are planning to teach in New Zealand, but most of these questions are applicable when you are applying for an international teaching job anywhere in overseas. So you have got an interview call for a teaching position in New Zealand. The next step should be to prepare for that interview appropriately. When I say appropriately, this means that you may have all the skills, all the knowledge, experience for that interview, but how you're supposed to deliver, how you're supposed to exhibit, how you're supposed to showcase your skills, experience, and knowledge, that will matter a lot. The first and foremost important question is they want to know about your teaching experience and how it aligns with New Zealand curriculum. So the first thing is you need to familiarize yourself with the New Zealand curriculum. I will do a separate video on that, but for now, I will tell you that in secondary schools, the curriculum is mostly managed by NCEA. I will give the link of NCEA in the description of the video. You can see what they are expecting mainly in year 11, 12, and 13. And then if you're applying as a secondary teacher, you need to go through broad topics, and then you need to correlate those topics, those technologies, those concepts that are being taught here in New Zealand as compared to what you have taught previously or you are currently teaching. So this will give the employer an idea whether the knowledge and experience that you possess is enough to match the knowledge and experience required to teach the New Zealand curriculum. So you need to do good research related to your subject through the NCEA website in order to get an idea about it. If we move further, the next question is, how do you approach differentiated learning to meet the needs of diverse learners? Here, you need to explain that how you apply differentiated learning in your classroom. So first, you can explain that maybe during the first 2 weeks, you try to assess the students' work to get an idea about their level in your subject, and then you categorize them on the basis of their learning abilities, and then you cater the classroom activities based on their learning approach. And then differentiation is not only in terms of the classroom activities. For example, you divide your students into 3 categories: ones who are beginners, then the intermediate students, and then the advanced learners. So the beginners may have the easy worksheets, the intermediate learners will have a bit challenging task, and the advanced learner will have more challenging tasks. But other than that, you can also specify your approach in differentiated learning where you are providing the content through differentiated learning sources. For example, you are not only giving them lecture or slides, but you are also providing them links to relevant videos. For example, YouTube videos related to the topic. You are providing them relevant links to different web pages explaining that topic. So this is how you need to explain how you apply differentiated learning in your classroom. If we move further, the next most important question they may ask you is, why do you want to teach in New Zealand and what do you hope to bring to our school? Now, just saying that New Zealand is a good country, of course it is a good country, but they want to know from the teacher's perspective. As a teacher, they want to know, why do you want to teach in New Zealand? If you will say due to good salary, due to high quality of life, these are the right answers, but they are not what they are looking for. So you need to explain. For example, if I talk about myself, when I was asked about this question, I told them that New Zealand is one of the best education systems in the world. And I feel that if I get a chance to work in New Zealand, to teach in New Zealand, I will not only teach my students, but I will also get a chance to learn about the practices happening in one of the best education systems in the world. The next thing that I mentioned was I was at that time teaching in UAE and I was teaching in an American college. So American curriculum and New Zealand curriculum, they both share some common things. And the most important and the most common thing is both of these curriculums do not take the board exams like O-levels, A-levels, where students have to attempt an external exam to get the grade. In American curriculum, students are taking exams internally at the school level. The exam is prepared by the teacher, the curriculum, the syllabus, content, everything is prepared by the teacher, and the grade is given by the teacher. So this means that you should have a good knowledge of not only your subject, but you have a good knowledge of assessment as well. What kind of assessment you need to design. And same is the case here in the New Zealand. If I talk about my subject, in the senior years, like in year 11, 12, and 13, the students have 4 terms, and in each term they are supposed to do one project. So they will do 3 projects internally, and we call them internal assessments, and I'm going to assess them on that. And they will do one exam as an external exam, which is the NCEA exam. So they will do 3 internal exams and 1 external exam, unlike the O levels and A levels exam, where the entire exam is conducted by Cambridge and the exam is assessed by external people. This is what makes me a strong candidate to teach in New Zealand. So I have shared the answer from my perspective. Your teaching experience may be different from mine, so you need to think how you can correlate and how you can justify your intentions to teach in New Zealand, and how you can justify that you are one of the suitable candidates to teach here. If we move further, one of the important things which is being focused here, and if you're applying as a teacher in New Zealand, you should be aware of the Treaty of Waitangi, also called as the Treaty of Waitangi. How you are going to use this Treaty of Waitangi in your teaching practices, what it is. So you should have a basic idea of this, because all the schools in New Zealand, they are focusing on this Treaty of Waitangi in the teaching and learning. So this treaty is basically, there are 3 key principles: partnership, protection, and participation. So you can mention these principles, and then you need to explain that how do you feel you would be able to achieve these principles if you are teaching here in New Zealand. So partnership means collaboration, as I told you. So collaborating with family and making sure that Maori students in your class feel valued and included. If we talk about protection, then you need to mention such as like you want to promote and you would like to use the Maori language, and this may include as simple as greeting the students in Maori language. For example, when my students enter in my class, I greet them by saying tailor, right? So this is the basic greeting in Maori. So you can start with basic greetings. You will learn and include Maori words in your teaching and learning. So this is how you will protect and promote the Maori language in your classroom. So when you have this kind of learning environment, then you will make Maori students feel confident to express their identity and culture. The third principle is participation. Now, this means that you are going to encourage all students to participate equally, especially the Maori student, to help them to succeed in their learning. So this is how you can mention that you can incorporate the Treaty of Waitangi 3 main principles in your teaching and learning if you get a chance to teach in New Zealand. Now, the next most common question is they are keen to learn about the strategies that you can use to manage the classroom behavior and to ensure a positive learning environment. Now, if I talk about my classroom, because I'm teaching computer programming here, my students, they have access to computers. So the most common challenge for me from the classroom management perspective is engaging students when I'm explaining something, because most of them get access to the online games, and it is, much easier and it is much pleasurable experience to play games on computers with high internet speed. So they start playing games. Now, the sitting arrangement in my computer lab is such that I cannot take a look of all the students at the same time that what they are doing. So I have to develop the classroom management routines that can help them to stay engaged. So I can say, for example, when I start my lesson, I try to grab the attention of my students. I make sure to ask them to keep their hands away from the keyboards. I ask them to keep their eyes and ears on me. After that, if they want to share their ideas, if they want to contribute anything, so we have established some routines where they have to raise their hand and then they can explain their perspective in the class. So this is how everyone gets a chance to talk in the classroom. And rather than giving a long list of rules, I usually prefer to give more concise and a brief list of rules. For example, respect everyone, no cell phones, then maybe raise your hand if you want to say anything, raise your hand and ask your teacher if you want to move around. So these are some basic classroom rules that you need to establish and you need to reinforce in your classroom in order to manage the classroom behavior and in order to ensure a positive learning environment in your classroom. But again, this is my perspective. As a teacher, you may have different strategies to manage the classroom behavior and the learning environment, so you can mention those strategies. By now, you must have got an idea that the questions that usually principals ask here in New Zealand, these questions are more practical oriented. These are like daily life questions for a teacher from the practical scenarios. They are not the typical questions where they ask you mention your strengths, your weaknesses and all that. In fact, they want to know how you are practically doing in your classroom and how you can relate your experience to the questions that they are asking. Another very important question is how you can support the students with special needs. So they may ask you to share an example or maybe 2 or 3 examples where you supported a student with special needs and what change you did in your teaching and learning to cater the needs of that specific child. In my case, if I share a few examples, in my previous experience, there was a student and he had the visual challenges. So he cannot see the little font size. So I would prepare worksheets for him with bigger font size, and since my subject is computer, it was difficult for him to type and work on computer. So for him, I will design the worksheets on paper with the big font size so he can also participate in the classroom activities. Another example is there was a student who was having challenge in writing on paper. So what I used to do, he was good in discussing the concepts that we have learned in a lesson. So what I did, I paired him with another student and he would have the discussion with him. He would give his input to him while they will solve the worksheets together. Another example is where I had this student and he was enthusiastic about technology. His processing of information was a bit slow. He was feeling challenged to process the information because in my subject, as I told you, it's technology. You have to open up a tool and you have to do a number of steps. So it's kind of more complex process. So what I have done, I started preparing the guided activities for him, which means if I am asking other students to do this task, and for doing that task, they have to go to the slides or they have to go to the learning material and they have to build their own understanding and then they have to extract the information and then answer that question. But for this student, I will give him one answer and then I will ask him relevant questions to that given answer or concept. That answer is given right in his worksheet, and so it is easy for him to relate those questions directly to that answer and then come up with answers rather than finding it and processing it through the slides, which may take much time. So these are few examples that I have shared with you where I have supported a student with special needs. How you can support the students with special needs, it depends again upon your experience and your approach. Assessments are really important for students and for teachers as well, and principals are keen to know that how you are using formative and summative assessments to improve your student learning outcomes. Now, depending upon the type of curriculum you are teaching, the summative assessments could be different. For example, while I was teaching in Dubai or while I'm teaching here in New Zealand, the summative assessment happens at the end of each term, like almost after 10 weeks, while the formative assessments are happening throughout the term. Now, formative assessments are like the classroom activities, are the classroom tests, they are the group activities. Formative assessment helps us to to get an idea how much students are understanding. And based on formative assessment, we need to decide whether a student needs extra support or extra attention, and if yes, then up to what extent. For example, do you have to change the delivery method? Do you have to design a differentiated worksheet for them? You use the formative assessment data to communicate to the student. You can tell them if they are doing well, if they are behind the expected progress. You can discuss their progress on the basis of formative assessment to the subject head, to the level dean, or to their parents. So these formative assessments help you to make decisions while students are learning through a specific time period. Summative assessments, mostly they are happening at the end of the year, at the end of the term. For example, here in New Zealand, I'm taking 4 summative assessments, 1 in each term. You need to relate according to your experience. For example, in your school, you might be doing the midterm exam. You might be doing, for example, end of term exam. You might be doing the monthly test. So these are the summative assessments. Your students might be doing the board exams. These are the summative assessments. And as a teacher, I will use this data not only to facilitate the students, but I will use that also to support my teaching practices as well. For example, as a teacher, what I'm not doing well or what I am doing well with the students, what I should continue doing. And I will suggest you that you should do the unit review with your students. So once you are done by teaching them in one term, whether it is required by your school or not, you should prepare a simple, I will say, a Google Form survey, and you can ask your students some basic questions. Nowadays, international institutions, international schools, they are more keen to hire those teachers who know how to use a diverse range of digital tools and technologies to enhance the learning experience of learners, to engage the learners in the classrooms. For example, if I talk about myself, I'm using Google Form, I'm using quizzes, I'm using Kahoot, I'm using WordWall, I am using BlueKit. So these are all the different learning technology tools that I'm using in my classroom. So I will mention them and how they can enhance, because they are providing a gaming type of environment where students are competing with each other. You can mention all these tools and how you are using them. I will do another video on the digital tools that I use in my classrooms, and I will post that video soon as well, so you can go through that as well to get an idea. If we move further, so another important thing which schools are really keen to know is your communication with the parents, how you are going to handle parents, especially if a parent is not happy with their child's progress in your classroom. Now, in such scenarios, I will suggest always maintain a log of students who are not doing well in your classroom. Maintain the log of their progress, what they have done and what they have not. Give them regular feedback and share that feedback to their parents as well. So if you're communicating to the parents in advance, then most probably there is a very least chance that a parent will be unhappy with their child's progress, because in that case, you have kept their parents informed in advance about their child's progress. Share the steps that you are taking and ask them to counsel their kids as well. And this is how you can avoid unpleasant experience of having a parent who is unhappy with their child's progress in your class. However, if they still approach you, you should have the data ready in your head. For example, the instances where you tried to communicate them, whether they have responded or they have not. For example, if you are posting your work on Google Classroom, you should give regular feedback on Google Classroom. You should share the feedback to the subject head or the level dean. You should have the evidence of sharing feedback with parents. So if you have all these feedback, then you can show that to the parents that this is what I have tried and this is how you have responded or you have not. But then you cannot blame them, and you can sit with them and you can note down the steps, maybe the further steps. For example, I will keep you posted about the students' progresses, and it will not only be the challenges or the failures of student, but I will also share the success of student as well. If the student is doing well, I'll inform you about that as well. So this is how you can set some expectations, and this is how you can tone down a parent who is unhappy with their child's progress in class. The next important question is about your understanding for NCEA, or National Certificate of Educational Achievement, which is the main qualification for secondary school students in New Zealand. This includes what are the years that NCEA is, catering, for example, year 11, 12, and 13, and how many credits at each year or each level a student has to gain in order to clear that level, and how these credits are divided, which subject is having how many credits, and all that. And especially related to your subject, you need to go through that in detail. As I said, I will do a video on NCEA in detail, but for now, I will give the link of NCEA website in the description of the video. Feel free to go through it and try to get a basic idea or the basic understanding of how NCEA system works here in New Zealand. So far, in all of my teaching interviews in my 12 years career, I have got this question, which is describing a lesson I have taught that went really well. Or maybe they can ask you what an outstanding lesson or what an amazing lesson would look like if they enter in your classroom. Now, if I share my perspective and my answer for this question, so it would be starting a lesson with an engaging starter and then having the main discussion. And that discussion should involve input from the students. It should not be the one-way communication from only my side, but it should be students who are more talking and discussing about the topic. And then after that, there will be main activity, which will be most probably the differentiated activity to cater the diverse learners. And then after that, I will share the solution of that activity so that students can do the self-assessment. I can also mention that, for example, the starter activity could be the collaborative activity to foster the collaborative learning, because nowadays in all international schools, these are the two main things they are focusing on: collaborative learning, and second, the differentiated learning. So not only you have to tell them, but you need to actually incorporate in your lessons as well. So for example, when you have an interview call, you can send them your recent lesson plan, which for a lesson which was an outstanding lesson, to give them an idea how did you do your planning for that. All right, so once we are done with the starter, discussion, differentiated activity, providing solution of the activity, the last part could be the plenary, how I'm going to conclude my lesson and how I'm going to know that what my students have learned so far. And the main thing I will focus in my lesson would be the engagement of students. So all the students should be engaged and they should have a good rapport with me. They should be comfortable asking me questions. They should be comfortable discussing with each other. So this is how an outstanding or a really well executed lesson would look like for me. Again, you can share your experiences. You can think about your lesson that was an outstanding lesson and how you executed that. So you can share that to the principal. All the overseas schools are focusing on the well-being and mental health of students. So most probably the school will ask you this question, that how you can support the well-being and mental health for your students. So you need to share from your personal experience. For example, the first and the foremost step that we do to promote the well-being and mental health of our student is having a safe classroom environment where the students are respecting each other, they are respecting themselves, they are respecting the teacher as well, and they all are feeling valued, and they have an open communication channel. They can communicate to the teacher about their feelings, they can ask for help, moreover, as a teacher, I will keep an eye to see that if a student looks stressed or anxious or upset, so I will extend my support by asking them if it is something related to the subject, if it is something related to their family. Most of the schools have student counselors, they have well-being coordinators, so you can refer them to those coordinators. They can help them. So this is how you can support well-being and mental health of your students, and this is how I will answer this question if I have to. The next question is, schools are keen to know about not only your strengths, but they are keen to know when was an instance where you were not as successful as you were expecting. So for example, they will ask you to share a super hit classroom activity and a flop classroom activity in your classroom, and you need to explain them why it was a super hit or a flop classroom activity. Now, to get these kind of insights, as I have told you, it's better that you should have done a unit review with your students. If you have not done that already, you need to start doing that now. So for example, if you're teaching your students a subject that has 3 or 4 main parts, you should do a unit review at the end of each component. And this feedback that you will take from students will help you. You can ask them in that survey. So for example, if I have to answer this question, I will relate it in this way, that my students in the unit review, they shared their experience, that they felt really engaged and they really enjoyed the collaborative learning activities. And then I will pick up examples of 1 or 2 collaborative learning activities that actually I feel they really enjoyed, because then I will reflect on their feedback and then I will think, okay, fine, if they're talking about the collaborative learning activities, so what are the exact collaborative learning activities that I recently did? And even I saw that students were enjoying it. And then if we talk about the flop activities, so flop activities means you gave those activities to your students, but then they were not enjoying it a lot. This could be, for example, you designed an activity which was really good from your perspective, but when you executed that, maybe the content difficulty level was much higher, or maybe you were not able to explain a concept in your lesson that would have helped them to do that activity more efficiently, and you could see them, they were not enjoying. So that could be a flop activity, and you can give the reasons that why it was a flop activity. So make sure that you have at least 2 really good activities and 2 flop activity examples from your daily teaching and learning in your mind. And if you have this question, so you should be able to explain it very well. So most of the international schools are providing the professional development trainings. Some of them are providing these trainings on the weekly basis. Some of them are providing these trainings fortnightly or maybe the monthly basis. Some of them do these activities or these trainings in the beginning of the term. Some of them are doing them throughout the year. So as a teacher, I will say you need to maintain a log, whatever professional development trainings you have done, the date of the training, the title of the training, and then maybe a paragraph of the training, what you did in that training. And then the most important thing, because if I tell you, the international schools, they are not only keen to know that, okay, you have done a training, but they are more keen to know how you applied your learning from those trainings in your classroom and how it turned out. Was it a hit or was it a flop? So, for example, I was asked about a recent professional development training in my interview, and I shared 3 or 4 that I could remember. And then I shared one of them that this is the activity that I applied in my class. I told them that some of the examples that were shared in that training, I used a few of those. For example, as I'm teaching the programming, so I will show 3 or 4 programs on my screen as a starter or as a plenary, and then I will give the output of those programs. I will distribute that among my students, and then I will ask them to see which student is holding the output for program A, which student is holding the output for program B. So in that case, they have to go through all the 3 or 4 programs that I have displayed on screen, and then they have to look at the output that they are having in their hand, and they are thinking about it. They are doing the critical thinking. They are inquiring that which program could be the most suitable one for the output that they are holding. So this is how I explained it to them, and this was actually from my real life life teaching experience. As I said, you need to think about all the real life teaching experiences. You should not come up with a theoretical thing, because if you are coming up with a theoretical thing which you have not applied in your classroom, and once you are here, you are actually teaching the students, the management, the lesson observer, they will get an idea instantly that you were not giving a good idea of your teaching practices during the interview, and mainly you were just providing the theoretical experiences and not the practical ones. So make sure that you are sharing all those things that you are applying in your classrooms as a teacher. As a teacher, your responsibility is not only teaching the students, but also contributing in the extracurricular activities as well. So if you are running any clubs at the moment, for example, it could be a chess club, a football club, a music club, reading club, etc. So you need to explain that in whatever capacity you are supporting your students and your school for the extracurricular activities, you need to mention them, and you need to tell the school that, okay, I'm keen to do, or I'm keen to run this club when I will join your school. This will give them a feeling that you are not only restricting yourself, or you are not currently restricting yourself to just teaching and learning, but you are happy to offer your services for the extracurricular activities as well. Alright, if you find this video informative, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with your family and friends to give them an idea that what are the international schools, and especially schools in New Zealand, are expecting from teachers, or what kind of questions they are asking teachers, so you or your friends or family members can prepare according to that. Thank you very much, and stay tuned for the next video.